broadcast network, AFTERBUZZ TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads in over 150 countries, and your #1 source for after-show entertainment. AFTERBUZZ TV, the destination for TV superfans, producing after shows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
I love it, I love it. Hey guys, welcome back to episode 5 of The Affair. You are rocking out, and I love it.
I am. I'm feeling it.
Well, this episode is driving us crazy, that's for sure, no pun intended.
Right.
Hey guys, I'm April Whisenhant, and I'm with my main man, Lim. What's up?
What's up? I'm so glad to be here once again on this show. The show is amazing.
I know, right? Tonight's episode was crazy. We learned some crazy things we've been wondering about for so long.
Right.
2 points that stuck out to me before we even get into the episode. One, we know who died.
Yes.
Scotty
finally
died.
Scotty,
the brother-in-law. So
which we called. We said that was what it was.
We definitely thought he was top of our predictions for sure.
Exactly.
And 2, probably maybe more important than that, we learned that she is using birth control.
Yes.
Because whenever they discuss that in the episode, I'm like, thank God.
Right.
But then that kind of, the baby thing, that gives us more questions about that. But.
Well, I mean, and birth control, people on birth control can still have children. So it may turn out to still be a shocker because maybe the birth control didn't work.
Yeah.
We know that, according to her statement, she does have a child when she's talking in the future to the detective. So it'd be interesting to find out, who's it for, because if she's having birth control, it's protecting her from both guys. So.
Very good point. Yeah, 2 huge things though. I'm still, even though we both predicted that it was Scotty, I was still like surprised that they just kind of nonchalantly, oh, so Scotty died.
And they do that. They've been doing that. They like nonchalantly give these cues, even when they found out that her baby drowned. It was like, he was just talking to her. It was like, my baby drowned. And it's like, oh my gosh, we've been waiting forever. And then they just hit us with that. No big fire
just like,
works or anything. Yeah. So good writing.
Yeah.
Good writing.
Best writing.
Yeah.
For sure. It's amazing. So, okay, let's delve into it. So this week was a little different. Part 1 was Allison, where it's normally been Noah.
Yes.
I wonder why they did that. I didn't see any like major reason why they would.
Yeah,
Maybe
I don't know.
To switch it up a little bit.
Well, you see last, week, they did it to where there was a continuation. So they're kind of changing up how they're doing it. So maybe they just, again, just keeping us guessing. They don't want to be predictable, which I can see with this show. This show is very much, if I can use that term, not predictable.
Yeah.
So I think maybe they're just switching it up just to keep us guessing.
I think so too. So it starts off, Allison, rookie mistake. She is in bed. Cole asks her if she wants to go and watch him surf. And she says she couldn't sleep the night before. I'm so tired, baby. I gotta sleep more.
Right.
And then she gets up and starts to get dressed. After he leaves, he walks back in because he forgot his wax.
Right.
And the most awkward moment because they just stare at each other.
Right.
Like nothing is even said until he's like, I forgot my wax.
Right.
And it's like, you're not going to explain yourself. You're not going to, or to Cole, like you're not going to ask a question. She clearly lied to you and is going somewhere. You just don't care to ask.
Well, I think it's interesting. I think it shows their relationship of where they are.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like they're both hiding things. Like, even though she's obviously playing this major affair, but I think there's things that he does that he hides from her. I see kind of his actions, and they just seem to me even still to be a little bit suspect. So I think with him, I'm not saying he wasn't going surfing, but I think that because he does those same things, I think maybe that was the reason why he didn't. And it's funny that he says, oh, I like that dress. Like, instead of questioning her, like, what are you doing? Oh, I like that dress.
Good point, I guess. But it's just so like, I'm like, they're in the land of passive aggressiva.
Yes.
Like they don't say anything. They're just like, we're just going to be really awkward and just go about our lives. But she goes to her friend Phoebe's house that she's house sitting for. Phoebe's a folk singer who travels a lot, where Noah meets up with her and they engage in a little rendezvous, as they are used to at this point, I guess.
Well, ever since the first time.
Exactly. That I thought was so long ago, but was apparently last week. And something that stood out in the scene to me, other than, you know, obviously they seem way more comfortable in the affair now. Last week, everything, you know, since it was the first time, was super still fidgety and awkward, but they, you know, they're into it. It's super comfortable, or they seem to be super comfortable anyway. They share a moment when they're laying in bed after, and she's talking about how, you know, she has thought about leaving the island before. She used to want to be a doctor and that sort of thing, but they couldn't afford it. Her family couldn't. And he tells her that he did not grow up rich, that his dad, I think, was a truck driver, and his mom was a waitress. And this kind of shows me that they're, not only is it just sexual, but they're also like, they're really, you know, getting to know each other. That's sharing, you know, that's not something that you just share on a whim with someone. They're actually like really, you know, sharing their life stories with one another, which is just going to keep tangling that web even more and more, the closer that they get. Absolutely.
And I think that moment there was showing a glimpse of, for at least on his end, why he is having the affair. I think, and we see that, you know, with his wife coming from money, and the fact that, you know, and it was very prevalent in this episode about how, when it got especially to his portion, about how his father-in-law continues to keep mentioning that he keeps giving him money, keeps giving him money to take the kids with school, keeps giving money to hold the household down, what have you. And I think he's tired of that. You know, I feel like he feels emasculated. He feels like he's not pulling his weight, even when, and we'll get to it, but, you know, just to give a preview, you know, his wife says, you know, you're never going to be successful if you write one book a semester. And so it's like these kind of blows are happening to him, and he's fed up with it, you know, and, you know, his kids are kind of out of control, his daughter, you know, which we'll get into. But I mean, I think with her, he feels like he can be himself. She's not expecting him to be anything more than what he is, what he's comfortable doing. He loves being a teacher. You know, he obviously is a writer, but I don't think that's his passion, which is, you know, he's more or less using it, I feel, as an excuse to kind of have his wife be able to, like, my husband's an author, you know, just like her father. So I think that was just a moment where connecting, where they could be like, oh, we come from similar backgrounds, which is why they're together.
And on the same level, I think that's the reason why she likes him, is because he doesn't know that much about her past, or he knows now. He knows about the baby. He knows even more intimate details, like that she's cut herself before, but he wasn't a part of that. So I think for her, he's kind of a breath of fresh air, because he doesn't know that. She's, you know, sharing little details about her life, but there's definitely a big, very important chunk that she's, you know, just skating over a little bit.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why she is so comfortable with him, because it doesn't have to be about the grief. With everyone else in her life, it's, oh, poor Allison, she went through this. Obviously, you know, she went through a very crazy and traumatic time. And people treat her that way, and he doesn't treat her that way. So I think it's something for them to relate on, for sure. So she gets a call while they're still at Phoebe's house, and it's from her grandmother's nursing home. And this is where we find out that her mom is back in town. We haven't heard much about her mom, if anything about her mom so far. But we learn her mom is always traveling. She is like a holistic doctor, I guess, basically. Something like that. And we learned that Allison's grandmother has Alzheimer's
disease.
How do you say that?
Alzheimer's?
I always say Al for some reason. Anyway, but so Allison goes to see her, where we meet, and that's where we see Athena, her mom, for the first time.
Who changed her name.
Right. It used to be Shelley.
Yes.
What a strange thing.
Well, she's a professional healer. Maybe that just worked better with her healing. tactics.
Shelley just didn't fit.
Right. Athena. Yeah.
And so I thought it was very just like a big moment for Allison whenever her grandmother who is played by Lynn Cohen, who I love. I think is an amazing actress and has played some of my favorite parts in different movies. But I thought it was huge that to Athena, who was her own daughter, she's like, who is this person? And Allison, she greets, you know, with welcome arms. She definitely remembers her. And, you know, you can tell that they spend a lot of time together. And it just shows how much Athena really hasn't been there. And Allison doesn't even call her mom. She calls her Athena.
And I think it's also interesting as a part where Athena says, oh, you only come once a week, because she says, oh, I bring these every week, these peaches or what have you, or whatever she brought with her. She's like, oh, you only come once a week. And I thought it was very, how can you say that? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, how you hardly ever come, and then you're going to, obviously, she lives out of town or whatever. Maybe that's her excuse. I guess she's saying, well, you live in town, you only come once a week. But it's like, that's your mother.
Right.
You should be coming more often. And the fact that she really tried to come in there and take over kind of the situation and talk about her meds, and she don't even know really what's going on. And I thought it was interesting that, the grandmother, how she didn't recognize, she said, oh, well, I have a daughter, but her name is Shelly.
Right.
And she's been this and she's done this. And she's like, well, actually, I changed my name. And you find out that, yeah, she was those things, but that's what her mother recognizes. She doesn't recognize this new individual. So I feel like that plays a part of where she's kind of detaching herself.
Right.
And I think why a lot of reason, which I'm sure there'll be some more development later, but why Allison resents her. She wasn't there as a mother, it seems like, based on some of the things we've said. And obviously she has an issue with her in-laws,
right,
which we saw, and we'll talk about, obviously.
Well, Allison also mentioned whenever she was speaking with Noah right before she left, she's like, oh, she probably broke up with another one of her boyfriends, which we learned that she did. And a little thought popped into my mind, like, the apple doesn't fall that far from the tree.
Really?
Think about it. If her mom is kind of, I guess floosy is the wrong word. I'm sure she's not, but she, she clearly says she doesn't believe in monogamy. She doesn't do this.
Mom gets around.
It's definitely not like the best example. That's totally like really reaching for something right there, but it's not like, I fully expected it to be from the preview last week where we see Allison's mom be like, you're having an affair with that man.
Right.
I thought it was going to come super accusatory and derogative, and she was not going to be happy with it.
Right.
But, obviously we learn whenever they're talking later that that's not the case.
Right.
And speak of that, okay, so she tells, Allison tells Athena that she's watching Phoebe's house and that's where she's going to be. And she's having dinner with her in-laws later. So she can't hang out, basically. And I knew, I'm like,
absolutely.
Troubles are brewing right there.
And that's the thing. It was like, again, Ricky move. She's like, oh yeah, I'm watching Phoebe's house. I'm gonna be there later. Well, her mom is going to try to go. She's obviously pressing to spend time with her. And you give her that information. You could have said anywhere else, lied and said anybody's house, or said you're gonna be at home, or something. But I think she said that, and I think afterwards she realized, like, oh my gosh, I said the wrong thing, especially with the fact that she's doing dirt at Phoebe's house.
Right.
So
you don't tell someone where you're going to be at if you're having an
affair there. Yeah,
like,
exactly.
You're already lying. What's another lie?
And then the mom's going to come like, come on now. That's just setting yourself up for disaster.
Exactly. Which she clearly isn't thinking about, obviously. But I knew too, because, or I felt anyway, Allison's mom is, she reads energy and all of this sort of thing. And I could just tell from the way that she was looking at her whenever they left the nursing home. I'm like, oh, she's feeling something, or she just definitely looked suspicious about what Allison was doing and her reasoning for everything. And obviously she was right. So she goes to work, and Oscar, her boss, obviously is there. And basically she's watching the clock the entire time because she told Noah that she would see him after, since she had to leave in such a huge rush after they had their little rendezvous. And Oscar says, hey, are you still watching Phoebe's house? And she's like, yeah, why? And he's like, oh, just wondering, which tells me Oscar knows something, or Oscar has been, he's been up to something. And we see in part 2, in Noah's part, that he actually, obviously Noah and Allison's stories were a little different, which we'll get into at that part. But you see that Oscar was driving in that area. It's called Ditch Plains.
Right, when Noah got the flat tire.
When Noah would have been there. So now I'm like, oh, because Oscar drove by and probably saw the car. So Oscar definitely knows something, or thinks that something's up. He's not an idiot. And I'm just wondering how that's going to play out.
Well, he's been suspicious, I think, for a while. I don't think this is the first time, but I think now his suspicions, because honestly, I really think that he kind of favors Allison like he would want to, like, she's obviously married. He respects that. We know we've talked about this before. I think it was a couple of weeks ago, where he kind of does support her.
Right.
They grew up together, you know, in the area or what have you. Obviously, you know, their families have history. He also has history with, you know, the in-laws, which I think is why the issue there is with him. But I think that there's something that he wants with Allison. Like, if Allison was to have an affair with him, I think he would be kind of obliging, you know. So I think there's something there. So I think there's, because of that, and there's maybe a tinge of jealousy, possibly. I think he's, you know, starting to read into it, and he's definitely a smart guy. And I think when he asked her that question, he already knew what was up. And so him even coming over to the house to give Noah, you know, oh, you left your you know, AAA card.
Right.
I just came to bring it back. And then mentioning like, oh yeah, anytime you go ditch planes, you know what I'm saying? Where his right. And his wife's like, ditch plane, you know. So the thing is, he knows what's up. He already knows what's going on. He has his suspicions. He may not know the full story, but he knows what's going on. And because I feel like he is a hater, because he's shown himself many times to be that way, that it's just another way for him to be like, I'm gonna get in there. I'm going to stir up some trouble.
Jealousy is 100% the right word.
Right.
I think it's clear from his body language that he has a thing for Allison, and just the way he treats her. You know, I know they've had a little bit of history, like way decades ago.
Right.
But I for sure think that's why. That's why. And he wants her to know, like, I know what you're up to.
Right.
So we'll see how he pursues that. But also, one of the most important things about when Allison was at work is that Scotty comes, because Oscar wants to borrow her phone to text him and say he's expecting a delivery or something like that. And so we see Scotty, her brother-in-law, come in and then leave with, you know, hey, bye, and that's all they say.
Very matter of fact.
Exactly. And that's they cut to this, you know, current day with the detective, and he's like, oh, why was he there? So they were friends. And this is when I kind of got the inkling. I'm like, oh, they're about to get into the it was the one that Scotty died, which obviously they don't for a bit, but I think there's got to be something more to that. Maybe not that initial meeting, but, you know, because as far as we've seen so far, I didn't know they were friends. I only knew that they were enemies. So maybe they were friends at one point, Oscar and Scotty.
It could have been one point, and I don't know. I didn't take from him coming there to do whatever that business transaction was. I didn't take that as them being friends.
No,
I take that as
either.
being amicable or being associates. But I definitely think that Oscar is definitely going to be a major player now that we know that he's, you know, he's the one that's been murdered, and he had dealings with them, and also he's been feuding with the family for years. And so I think he's going to end up in, you know, not to get into predictions already, but I definitely think that he's...
I just thought of something. Ooh, you just like, I got to write it down.
Okay.
I'll say it in predictions, though. Keep going.
Okay. I was like, oh, what happened? Oh, okay. So yeah, so I think that he's going to be a major player when it comes to like figuring out who was the murderer, you know, as far as suspects and things of that nature. I think he will then become a major part of that. But on the flip side, dang, I don't. Anyway, I'm already talking. I'm already talking. I know. I'm just already talking. On the flip side, I think he's going to use that to hold over the affair portion that he knows about, to hold over the head of them, you know, Noah and Allison, in some way, to maybe use it as a scapegoat or something like that. But I can just definitely see that brewing, you know, because of how he feels about the situation.
Right. I completely agree with that. So after this little interaction, we see Scotty leave. She goes back to Phoebe's house.
Yes.
Where Noah comes again. And
get down and dirty again.
Yeah. This is where they discuss protection.
Right.
And thank God she's on it, but obviously she ends up having a kid. Whose it is, we don't know that. But then he leaves, and who does he happen to meet in the driveway? But Mama Athena.
Which we knew was gonna happen.
Exactly. Like I mean, that was just obvious.
I mean, it just made sense for that to happen, because it's going to create more, you know, more drama for what's going on. And the fact that she messed up and told her, and she seems like she's definitely a busybody, and she's like, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to show up because that's the kind of person she is.
Well, and it's like, that's her mama. She has every right to, I guess. But I mean, technically not. But so she's cordial with Noah and the driver.
One thing though, just to add to the Haitian of Mr. Oscar.
Yeah.
Oscar's the one that gave her the directions. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
You're
Yeah.
right.
Because she's like, she didn't know how to get there.
Right.
But she got the directions from Oscar, and I'm sure he gladly wanted. You see what I'm saying? Like
Oscar,
he gladly.
you dirty dog.
He's a hater. He's drinking his haterade. He gladly wanted to give her the directions. So I'm sure that was out of spite. I'm sure because he feels what's going on. Oh
Jealousy.
yeah, go right ahead. There's the directions here. All of that. Go right now.
For sure. Mama Athena is pretty nice to Noah in the driveway. And as soon as he drives off, she's like, you're having an affair with that man.
Boom.
And the way that Allison turned around and is like, what are you talking about? It actually didn't, like, she can play the part. She didn't seem like too awkward or too much like she was lying. She seemed genuine. But her mom was like, I can feel the lust energy.
The lust energy.
I'm an energy reader. But it's written all over their face. They're sitting there staring at each other like, oh, yeah. Hi.
Right.
And she's like, you just had sex with that man.
I feel it.
Yeah, like, but this is where I thought that she was gonna take the motherly role, like, you can't be doing this, you're married. But she's like, you deserve this. You deserve to have joy in your life after what you went through. She says, I wrote down specifically what she said because I thought it was huge, that this is the first time she's seen her life force since they lost Gabriel. And it's kind of what everyone else says too. Not that they see her life force now, but that she kind of lost her life whenever she lost her son. And so her mom seeing this new energy, whether it's a lust energy or just plain old energy, she's happy for her and thinks that it's a good thing.
Yeah, and it just goes back like why each one of them are having the affair. We talked about why Noah's reasons are and why they were explaining. This is definitely her reason. This is getting her away from her son. This is the town she lives in. She can't get away from her son dying. Everyone knows. The families are intertwined. She's obviously not gelling with her husband, and this is her escape. Noah's her escape, and so her mom sensing that truly is the correct thing.
Right.
She's sensing that, yes, she is feeling better. She's got her, her mojo back or whatever you want to call it. But I think also
Allison got her groove back.
Oh shoot. But I think also the mother, Athena, I think her thing is that's kind of how she operates.
Right.
She's been the one like, oh yeah, I've had multiple husbands, girl, all this kind of stuff. And so she's all about being a free spirit. She's a healer, you know what I'm saying? Spiritual or whatever. And so she's all about like in tune with being with the spirit, in tune with doing what you want to do, kind of, living by the seat of her pants, not having really a lot of structure or whatever. She kind of just comes and goes as she pleases. And I think her daughter, I feel like she was kind of proud of her daughter because her daughter's like, oh, she's not following the rules. She's having this affair and it's making her look like a better person, on the outside.
Right.
And so I think it was kind of congratulatory.
Yeah. Kind of crazy that a mother and daughter can bond over the daughter having an affair.
Right.
And I think Allison resents her for the same things that she's doing, for not being there, for maybe never having, a solid role model man in her life. But I guess they can bond over this affair.
Yeah.
But so Athena goes with Allison to the Lockharts for dinner, and trouble.
Craziness.
Cherry. No, yes. Cherry, her mother-in-law, Cole's mom, pulls her aside and offers and gives her wedding band and says that, Cole may seem like he doesn't need you. He's very tough, yada, yada, yada. But you are the most important thing in the world to him. And I want you to have this, I guess, as a reminder, just like a special thing from mother-in-law to daughter-in-law.
What did you, I just have a question, because when that happened, I was like, I was trying to feel like the moment, like why this was happening. What do you think the reason was that she did that in that particular moment? Because there could have been a lot of times that she could have done that, but she picked that particular moment to kind of put her aside and give that to her.
I wondered the same thing whenever that was happening. And the only thing that I can think of, and this isn't necessarily a reason, is that we have to remember that this is a story that Allison is telling. So it's like more so, I couldn't really decide why Cherry would give her the ring right then, but I'm like, why would Allison choose to include this part of the story to the detective? So I think I don't know if the ring, because they had kind of started arguing before that about the ranch, because apparently you know, they bring up there's a leak on the roof and everything. And she says she got an offer on the ranch, which a $30 million offer.
Right.
Some are for it. Cole is very much so against it. So I don't know if maybe she could just read Allison's energy right then, which is, she's not the energy reader of the bunch. But I think maybe she could just like sense the trouble and sense the tension. I don't know though. What do you think?
That's why I asked you.
Yeah, I know.
I was like,
I wish I had the answer, but I really don't know.
I was trying to figure out myself, but I think you do make a good point, is that this is Allison's version. She's telling this story. It could have been something to make her seem, because again,
maybe
she's
more lovable.
Yeah, because she's in this situation where her mother is there, who she's not very fond of, in the middle. She kind of drags her to, I mean, just for save face. Okay, Mom, you can come, you know, because she really wants to come, you know, hang out with her. She's like, I'm going to dinner. Fine, you can come. She comes, and then she's feeling very awkward because, as we find out later in discussion, that there's tension there because Allison feels that her mom wasn't there when she was going through these things, and you see her husband Cole kind of say, well, what are you talking about? And so it was interesting that she brought that up, and I think it was to kind of save face for Allison, to say like, okay, here I was in this situation, and you know, this caused, her giving me the ring caused this to happen, but it wasn't my fault. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, because you think about it, when the ring came available and she showed it to her, because, you know, Cherry was very excited. She's like, look what I gave her. You know, she wasn't going to say anything. Allison wasn't. But Cherry kind of brought it up. And then, you know, her husband Cole is like, oh, that's the ring, and da-da-da-da. And then it kind of started this snowball effect of kind of like, well, wait a second. You know, this, and this. Oh, well, I've had multiple husbands. I got a lot of rings I could give you type thing. And so you see the animosity that's there. So I think it was just a way for her to kind of put an image out there like, look, you know, I was being good.
Innocent old me.
Yeah, exactly. And this all happened around me. So that's the only thing I could think of her bringing this story.
I thought that this was, you know, after Cherry gives her the ring and they go back out and the fight starts happening, because Athena is very upset. She thinks that it's a symbol of like locking her down, and how much she like owes to the Lockharts and that sort of thing. Where I honestly think Cherry was just doing it to be nice, as a nice gesture from a mother-in-law. But so Athena and Cole start going at it, because he's like, how dare you say this? Where were you? My mother is the one that fed her when she couldn't eat. My mother is the one who bathed her when she was terrified, still terrified of water. I thought it's a really good acting moment for him, because he just like made you feel it. And you really see, you know, the darkness that Allison went through. She couldn't bathe, she couldn't eat, she couldn't walk, she couldn't do anything.
There was a lot.
Which, I mean, a mom, any mother, I'm sure, would go through when they lose their child. But it also, you know, adds questions to my head. Was Allison in the water when the baby drowned? What happened? Because if she was terrified of water, I wonder if it was.
I thought the same thing, and it could have been that, or it could have been just the fact that the baby died, you know, because of drowning, and so just the water brings back, you know, kind of memories, you know, of babies dying. So it could go either way.
Right, I completely agree. But so Allison's like, this is enough. This has gone too far. Mom, let's leave. And her mom brings up in the car how she. Allison's like, you were never here. Her mom brings up that she asked her to go with her. She's like, I asked you to travel the world with me. And Allison says, I was a child. Of course I wanted to stay. I wanted to stay and be with my friends. And it kind of shows me how Allison's mom is truly, you know, she's just not in tune with what's like really happening. And because what mother ultimately, I'm all for chasing your dreams and doing what you got to do, of course. But it's like, what mother leaves her small child with her grandparents? You know, it's so she can go and travel the world.
She's like a modern day gypsy. You know, she's just a nomad. It seems like she's this type of person that, you know, just goes where the wind takes her. Like she said, she's had multiple husbands. It was interesting to quote her. She said, oh, the story had ended, when talking about her last husband. It's like, oh yeah, the story had ended. It was like, okay. So,
just say you broke up.
Just say you broke up. So, or last boyfriend or whoever it was. But yeah, I think it's just, she's just that type of person. And Allison, again, just, you know, resents her for that, because when she comes around when she feels like it, you know. And so no one wants that for their parent to be that way, and just kind of, you know, not have any stability with them, or really have a true relationship relationship with him, because it seems like that's all she has.
Right. She also said, you know, one day you're gonna regret choosing him over me, which I thought was just like stab.
That was telling
to the gut,
as well,
because you don't want, obviously you don't want to hear that from your mom, but it's like, how dare she say that? She has no room to say it whatsoever. No room.
And a lot of the things she said in this entire episode, she really didn't have a place to say at all. When she was talking about, you know, grandma, Allison's grandmother, her mother, she had no place talking about, you know, medication or whatever. She hasn't been there.
Right.
You know, at the dinner table, she had no place. It was just like a lot of these things she didn't have a place, but she was trying to market because technically that's her mother. So I'm just curious to see as if they're going to develop that anymore. You know, with the story, if she's going to come back, it'll be interesting to kind of see how that goes.
For sure. So we end Allison's part back with the detective. He says he's done with her, no more questions, and ask about the night of this wedding again. And if she saw Scotty, she says, of course. Did he seem weird? Anything like that? She's like, no, he seemed like his normal self. And then it's like,
boom.
End. So I wonder what this wedding is too. I guess we'll find out.
I'm curious to find out who got married.
Me
because
too.
Everybody was there.
Apparently.
So had to be somebody close to all of them.
Wedding of the season. Anything else from her part?
Nothing that I remember. Just the fact that the argument which we talked about and kind of that end part that closed out with her mother.
So part 2, Noah's part, starts off, he is going for a jog, for a run, and his wife Helen asks him to get bagels.
Right.
His son walks down, Trevor, and wants to go with him, and he's like, no, this is my time alone.
Right.
And I'm like, ooh, getting too mad too soon.
Right.
You know, these rookie mistakes are just, they keep on adding up.
Which at the beginning he had a rookie mistake too, because if you remember, he was looking for his daughter Whitney.
Oh, right.
And you know, his wife is like, Helen is like, well, you know, she's gone. Well, you know, we already told you she's going to spend the night at her friend's house. And he's like, oh yeah. So that, and then, you know, with his son, it's showing that he's not present, which is a telltale sign of having an affair and not being present with the family. So I wonder how he's going to be able to keep this up, because again, as we'll talk about, the wife already has some kind of suspicions based on his whereabouts. And so, you know, everything's going to start adding up.
Right. So he goes to Phoebe's house, and this is where a huge difference in their story happens.
Yes.
With in Allison's part, it was very like slow, you know, they have this lovely little rendezvous, and in his part he's like super rushed, like he even says like, take your pants off, and
I gotta get bagels.
And
I'm supposed to be getting bagels,
and so she's like, text your wife, no, tell her to long line, say whatever,
something,
and he does, and that's where we learn that there's a crisis at home, something with his daughter Whitney, so they don't even have sex there, which where they did in her part.
That's a whole different, that's a hugely different portion.
And so I'm kind of like, why is that so different? I mean, obviously memories are memories, but
I think it just shows, again, this is his story, just like we were talking about with Allison. That just shows that he cares about his family, because the whole reason why he left is when he found out it had to do with his daughter, and that he had to go. He's like, oh, I gotta go. You know, it was a crisis. Because at first he was like, oh, it's nothing. But then when he finds out it has to do with his daughter, something happened with her, and he's like, oh, I have to go. And then she's like, oh, okay. She's not mad at him. You know, she's like, okay, we'll bring up later. But again, this would be him saying, I care about my family.
Right.
I left.
Of course, detective.
Exactly. My daughter was in trouble.
Good point, I guess.
Just saying.
So he leaves where he gets a flat tire on the way home.
Right.
And who happens to drive by but Oscar Hodges. And this is what we were talking about earlier, how whenever Oscar asked Allison in her part if she was still watching Phoebe's house, we know now that Oscar was in this area, because in Noah's part he drives past him and is like, oh, hey, I'll help you. I'll keep you company until AAA gets here.
Right.
So they kind of just like have a nice little chat. Oscar offers to go fishing, or invites Noah to go fishing with them, mentions that he used to know the Butlers, who are Noah's in-laws, and that he used to know Helen whenever they were really young, but that Helen probably wouldn't remember him.
Because she was older.
Right, and that was kind of just it. He does say, like, what are you doing out in this part of town? Noah says he's doing research. That man researches more than any author I've ever heard of.
I mean, that's his go-to. I mean, if you think about it, he's an author, and anywhere he's in a suspicious place, that's what he says. He's like, he said it, you know, when they were at the island. He's like, oh, well, I'm doing research, you know, and when he was talking about to his wife, you know, well, where are you going? Oh, I'm going to this place, Block Island, because I need to do research, which is where they kind of got together and consummated their, you know, affair for the first time. So that's just his go-to, and that's what he, you know, what he goes with.
Right.
My question is, what is Oscar doing out there? Because as we found out in a couple of episodes, this was a few weeks ago, he's been staying in his office. Remember when they go to pick up their checks, it was Allison and the other girl she works with. They went to go pick up their checks, and he's like all like sleepy-eyed, and what do you guys want? And what kind of pick up check? Are you sleeping here? And he's like, maybe, and da-da-da. And this is when we kind of saw that they had like a relationship goes back to childhood. So if he's out there, that's not the office. So I'm curious if either A, he does have a house there and he was, you know, now he's back to staying at his home, and he lives out there somewhere, or he's spying.
I think he's spying. Little Oscar is sneaky.
I wouldn't put it past him.
I know.
At all.
So Noah gets back home, and this is where we learn that his daughter Whitney has been a part of a bullying scheme. And they created this fake Twitter account. I forgot what it was called, but it had the word Skanko in it.
That was pretty much it.
Skanko, yeah. Skanko. And Noah is very upset about this, and he's like, you were going to this girl's house, you were writing an apology to her, and you're going to do whatever you can. And Whitney, they asked to see her phone. She throws her phone in the pool, which is like, I mean, hello,
dude,
you're trying to say you're innocent. No, you're guilty.
You gave yourself up.
And then they're yelling outside, and old grandpa comes out on the balcony. What's going on here?
So tired of him and his wife.
I know, right? So they go inside where Whitney is sitting on the couch with the grandpa and grandmother, Mr. and Mrs. Butler, and they're consoling her more so. And they're like, you're not going to say anything. That's admitting guilt. They're thinking of this from a legal stance instead of what's right and what's wrong, a moral stance.
Right.
And Noah says, all you're worried about is just your money all the time. And then of course it gets brought up. He's like, yeah, I pay for their school. I pay for your house.
Right.
You know, what more do you want?
Right.
And he says, maybe I should stop writing the checks to send her to school. You know, it's just another like belittling threat after another. And then, Whitney's like, no, please, I love that place.
Yeah.
I'm like, this chick needs to be punished because the girl who her and her friends were teasing tried to commit suicide.
Yeah, committed suicide.
And Noah is very bothered by the fact that Whitney doesn't really seem to be grasping the gravity of this, and that it's just not seeming to be important to her. But so he takes her to the house where he makes her apologize. She asks, do you think I'm a bad person if I've done bad things?
Right.
And he's like, no, I think that would make you an a-hole.
Right.
And which I think was kind of like, it was a telling sign, because he's like, just stop.
Right.
But I don't think he was talking about her. I think he was talking about this
He was
affair.
And that was interesting how that kind of played into, because she says, well, if I do one bad thing, does that make me a bad person? He's like, no, one bad thing doesn't. She's like, what if I do a lot of bad things? And then that's when he kind of was like, yeah, well, that would be like you said. And I think at that moment he was reflecting about what's going on in his life with this affair going on.
Right. So So Helen walks out, or whenever they get back, she suggests moving back to Brooklyn tomorrow.
Yeah.
He obviously does not want to do this because he's in an affair right now.
Right.
But he's making up all these excuses as far as, we don't need to do that. That's giving her attention. She doesn't need that. And then we learn that he has a visitor. Oscar shows up. And it's because, like you said, he left his AAA card, and it's very awkward because he says, yada, 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 ditch planes.
Right.
And Helen's like,
right.
What were you doing there?
Right.
And then Noah, like an idiot, goes and gets all meatheaded on him, and they have like a little shoving fest.
Yeah. Noah, what are you doing on me?
I know,
no,
right?
I think he sensed what Oscar was doing. I think he sensed that Oscar was definitely trying to kind of, in another, so many words, just try to rat him out, you know, that he was out there when he shouldn't have been. And I think that was his way of like, okay, enough. Like he's literally trying to get him out the house. All right, thank you. Time for you to go. And Oscar, of course, is like, hey, so da 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 da, and he's like keeps it going. He keeps it going. Again, he's master hater.
Exactly.
So of course, you know, he kind of pushes him off him, and then that's where kind of the shoving match starts. And he's like, what are you doing? And so, but then that Noah gives himself out. He gives himself away that yes, that he shouldn't have been over there based on his actions, which gives Oscar more leverage. Like, oh, okay, I see what's going on. All he has to do is put two and two together.
Exactly.
You know, so yeah, no, he should have kept his cool, but I think in that instance, instance, he's getting so worried about being caught that he's doing things, you know what I'm saying?
That are going to get him caught even faster.
You know,
Right.
again, there's no manual on having an affair. He's trying to do what he can, but right. You're picking up Cliff Notes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think he's definitely, he just got flabbergasted and, you know, lost his cool right there. And then I think after a while, he kind of just, okay, all right, let me settle down before I give myself up.
Right, exactly. So after that, we see him and Helen talking. Helen asks what he was doing in Ditch Plains. Obviously, she knows something is up. And then she says, she goes into this, you know, you're never going to be successful if you only write one book in your entire life. Like one little fight starts and leads into the whole other issue of what's going on.
Right.
And she's, you know, suggests him taking the semester off and staying home with the kids because she's read that teenagers need the same amount of attention as toddlers.
Right.
And it's just showing us, I think, you know, just like you said earlier, he's the one telling the detective this. Why is he telling the detective this? To give him more of an innocent leverage. And oh my gosh, my wife emasculates me. And she says, I need to do this. And she doesn't, you know, she can't sell her store. She says, I'll sell the store. But it's clear. She's like, I'll sell the store if I have to.
Right.
And, you know, I think he's purposefully saying this.
And it makes sense, too, because if you think about it, when he says, oh, we can't afford that, when we're talking about him taking the semester off and, you know, her keeping the store, he took the semester off, stay with the kids. He's like, we can't afford it. He's like, well, we'll just get more money from my parents.
Right.
And obviously, he's tired of getting money from her parents, you know, and especially what's happening with, you know, her parents kind of treating him kind of as a second-class citizen. You know, the fact that they butted in, I just want to go back to that. The fact that he butted in, you know, when it was about Whitney and about what was going on, and they kind of took over the parenting, and he's like, well, wait a second, we're the parents here.
Right.
And so, but he's like, oh, and then he brought up money, and then that's when he was like, well, I'm writing checks. So he almost like, he feels like it's his duty because he is having the money on the table. So it is a way that he can say these things, and it makes him feel like, oh, he's tired of getting this money, he's the victim, you know, blah, blah, blah. Exactly,
for sure. So after, you know, they have their little fight, where money is brought up, it goes into the detective thing again. The detective says to Noah, okay, we're done, no more questions. And then this is where he says Scotty is the one that died. And he asks, it ends on him asking Noah if he's ever been a place called The End.
Right.
Noah says, no, what's that? Or has he ever heard of it? And he says that's where I think Scotty was headed whenever he died. And Noah says he's never been there, but it is clear that the detective knows different.
Yes.
Or thinks differently. Anyway, yes. I should say. So I'm curious to where that's going to go. Yeah. We shall see.
We shall see.
Anything about his part before we get into our major predictions?
Nah, I think we covered it.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about some predictions.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV.
So many. We always have so many. What do you think? What are you thinking?
Oh man, I kind of gave mine, but I'll just reiterate that I think definitely Oscar is going to play a major role coming up with what's going on with the affair. You know, he knows some things now. You know, Noah kind of showed himself out, you know, at the house when he came by. And then he's already, you know, what he mentioned to Allison. So I think he's going to play a major part. I think we're going to hear more about who was the one that we know that died? Scotty. So I think there's going to be more development with Scotty's character, because if you notice, he's just kind of, you know, here and there. But now that we know they kind of let the cat out the bag that he is the one that was murdered, I think we're going to see more of him and kind of how it's going to get to that point, you know, of this happening, this wedding or what have you. I think we're going to find out who is getting married also, not necessarily see the wedding, but we're going to find out who is going to be married. So it's just going to be setting up for, you know, the whole culmination of how this even came to be.
Right, so, the whole shebang.
Exactly.
So what I thought of earlier, and I forget what you said now that made me think of this, but I kind of am predicting now that maybe Scotty and Oscar are working together on some sort of plan for the town, because we saw a few weeks ago, you know, Oscar's trying to get the bowling alley or whatever it was built. And then we see at the lunch today or dinner that whenever they suggest selling the house, some of the kids, I don't know like who said it, they weren't showing the faces, but some of them were not necessarily anti, but Cole is like, absolutely not.
Adamant.
Heck no.
Adamant.
This is our family. It's been our family for 7 years. So what if Scotty and Oscar are kind of like, oh, maybe we can make something happen, and Cole gets pissed and offs his brother. I don't know. I'm just saying, it throws out another suspect, because right now it's like, oh, it's Oscar. Clearly it's Oscar.
Right.
It throws out another suspect.
Interesting.
Is all I'm saying.
That would be, and not to say, but if I'm correct, I think it was Scotty was the one that says, yeah, because he says to Cole, you're not dad.
Oh, right, you're right.
You're not dad. You know, you're trying to play dad or whatever, and you're not. We can take our inheritance now. And then, you know, that's when Cole starts going like, no, it's been in there for like 7 generations or what have you. So that's a good point.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that wraps up another crazy episode. Where can everybody find you on social media?
Well, they can find me when I'm not here at AfterBuzz Studios. They can find me at The Poet Saint, and that's on Twitter and Instagram every day, all day.
And y'all can find me at April Whisenhant on Twitter and Instagram. Can't wait to see y'all next week.
Yeah.
Another crazy one.
Crazy one.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.